Welcome back to you wherever in the world you're watching. As we discussed before the break, the idea of defence manufacturing being key to that Make in India policy. We were hearing there the thoughts of Dr. Ajay Kumar and also Baba Kalyani. But now, as promised, to look at some of the wider implications and really to get into some of the detail raised in that previous conversation. Please welcome back Nitin Gokhale, who you saw in that last discussion. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of Bharat Shakti. Nitin, nice to see you again. I know you've assembled a great panel to talk us through this next issue and look at some of the wider implications that were raised there in your last chat. Take it away. Nitin, I'm hoping you can still hear us at this point. Nitin, are you still with us? Because I'd love you to take it away and get into our next discussion, if you would.
I'm live. I think we'll introduce her.
So let's hope. I'm going to try one more time. Nitin Gokhale, are you still with us? I know you were so valiantly getting through that last discussion despite a few technical issues at that end, but I know you've got a panel assembled to talk about some of the implications raised in that chat. So over to you to introduce your panel, if you would, please.
Okay. So thank you, Ben. This is the second panel that we're discussing on defense industry in India, and of course, making in India for the world is the theme. And I'm happy to introduce four panelists, co-panelists, eminent people in their own right, starting with Mr. J.D. Patil, who's the whole-time director and senior executive vice president of one of India's leading defense companies, the Larsen and Toubro group. He's looking after defense and smart technologies, which is, I think, a new addition to his portfolio. I have Louise. She is the senior vice president with Rolls Royce, looking after India and Southeast Asia. Ashok Atluri, an old friend and, of course, an innovator and somebody who's believes strongly in Make in India for the world. He's the chairman and managing director of Zen Technologies, based in Hyderabad, completely Indian company, and a practitioner earlier and now, and somebody who is trying to make an equipment and platforms for defense, Air Marshal S.B. Dave, who has formed a new company, JSR Dynamics, which is going to produce and manufacture high-end equipment for the Air Force and the Army and the Navy. He's launched his company just barely a year ago. So we have a widespread kind of experienced people in this panel. So basically aligning India with needs, making in India for the world. Can defense manufacturing stimulate Make in India is the question that we are asking in this panel. So let me start with Mr. Patil. Your thoughts on India's strengths in trying to make manufacturing in defense something not only for Indian armed forces but also for exports to other countries to begin with. Your thoughts, Mr. Patil.
Good afternoon, Nitin, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a subject, I must say, quite dear one, because we have one corporate which essentially has actually created 9 factories, and they all are dedicated to defense production. When we talk of India, we actually see that this was a domain which was completely not allowed for the private industry just 20 years back, opened up in 2001 and licensed in 2002. And from that point onwards, of course, last 18 years have only been, I must say, exciting. At the same time, more and more opportunities opening up. These opportunities have dramatically been accelerated last 6 years, and we are actually seeing more and more happening in the country. So if you ask me, Nitin, whether Make in India is here and real, yes, Make in India is in India truly is real and happening, and I see it across my factories. Ask me, is it good enough? I would say yes, there could be much more because my factories even today are partially loaded. They are not fully loaded. We can do far more. And I must say that it comes when we talk of Make in India, it can't just be a pure license production. So bulk of it you need to be doing in terms of basic fundamental R&D. And there's something which we chose to do 3.5 decades back and before the market opened. And that's essentially where some of us seem to be in a kind of a sweet spot that we can technically do anything and everything except a full-fledged aircraft or a helicopter. Anything that the armed forces need, we can do from the basic design onwards. We today deliver warships indigenously built, designed. I just won't say just built, designed. We do submarines from detailed engineering onward because Navy does the basic design in case of submarine. And we, of course, also do the armored systems and dozens of our weapon platforms and systems. And that's essentially where, for me, Make in India is happening. Make in India is for real and it's sticking by the time we start looking at it as an opportunity. It's already there.
Great. In fact, let me bring in the only lady on this panel, Ms. Donoghue. You look after Rolls Royce operations in India and Southeast Asia. The recent policy reform that India announced that the foreign direct investment will be enhanced to 74%. How do you see that panning out as far as companies like Rolls Royce are concerned, and what are your plans for India?
Well, thank you, and good afternoon and good morning from the UK. So let me talk about Rolls Royce and making in India. So we are proud to provide the power to protect for the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy. We've been in India supporting the armed forces for more than 8 decades now. And actually, we have 750 Rolls Royce aero engines operating in India today. So we've got a really proud history and partnership here. Our main fleets, as you're probably well aware, the Hawk and the Jaguar fleets for the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy, also the Sea King helicopters, the Hercules transport aircraft. So a lot of incumbency and a lot of proud history with India for Rolls Royce as a company. And actually, we've been making in India for more than 60 years now. So like my esteemed colleagues, I very much see that Make in India is real. We started licensed production of the Orpheus engine back in 1956. And today we have licensed production of the Ador engine for both the Jaguar and also for the Hawk fleet with our partners HAL, with whom we also enjoy more than 60 years of partnership. So Make in India is very, very real for Rolls-Royce, for HAL and for India. Our plans for India, we actually want to move beyond making in India. And I think it was commented upon by Mr. Patil. We'd like to move to creating in India. So we really see that there's the talent, the engineering capability and the supply chain capability to design new engines with India. And I think the UK is very well placed in terms of being able to co-create new intellectual property to partner with India to secure a future of self-reliance. So our plans in India are hugely ambitious, but we're not doing them alone. We're doing them in partnership. And for me, this is a journey from Make in India, which has existed for more than 60 years for Rolls-Royce with HAL. And it's a journey to how do we truly create in India? Because only through creation and co-development can you truly gain self-reliance in defence. So we have a very ambitious programme with an eye towards future combat to work in partnership with India to develop new jet engine technology. We're supported by the UK government in that, and it's a highly ambitious to do much, much more in India. So to your question on the increase in investment, foreign direct investment, we see that as extremely positive. Right now, we already have, as you're well aware, I think, a joint venture with HAL called IAMPL, which manufactures components for our civil aerospace business. But we see that capability as being more than what it is today. You know, why wouldn't we expand that into defence manufacturing? Why wouldn't we take the talent in India, because there's great talent out there and capability, and do much more in defence? So we'd like to encourage more UK companies, small and medium enterprises, to look at India for investment and to actually grow our supply chain capability to support the future of our legacy operations, the current fleets today, but also create our future together. So we're hugely optimistic and ambitious about India.
Great to know that. On that note, let me bring in Ashok Atluri of Zen Technologies, one of the earliest proponents of what I call IDDM, which is included in the Defense Procurement Procedure of 2016, indigenously designed, developed and manufactured products for Indian defense industry. Ashok, your thoughts on how Make in India and defense can actually propel not just the Indian economy, but also, as the Prime Minister said, India is going to play a major role in reviving the world economy. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. Thank you. Hello, co-panelists and other ladies and gentlemen. I do think that India is on right track, even though it's moving at not at the pace that we would like, as Jayant has said. But we can see a huge shift. Earlier it was just Make in India, but now we are talking about manufacturing is just a very, the last mile activity. We should do the previous activity, the design and development. As Louise has said, creating in India is very, very important for us. We have to capture, the IP has to be India owned, and we should be the people who should be asking for royalties worldwide. So that's the most important part. Again, I give the example of Apple iPhone. Apple iPhone sells at $1,000. The bill of material is about $245. And $5 is the manufacturing cost which Foxconn charges. Are we going to focus on 0.5% or the 75%, which is the design and development thing? Yeah. So we really should, refocus on design and development. And in fact, it should be made part of the slogan: design, develop, and make in India. So yeah, but I think the government has introduced. Parrikar was very, very far-sighted. Everybody was against that policy when Parrikar wanted to introduce, and when we pitched to him, he said it makes complete sense. And in 2016, our defense minister, late Mr. Manohar Parrikar, actually said we will have that. Everybody else was saying first learn to walk before running, but he said no, I want this policy to be there because that's where India should be. So we feel that there are a few companies that are designing and developing, and government is starting. The concept of self-reliance is not based on manufacturing, but it's based on actually owning the IP of the products. And in fact, very frankly, you can make it anywhere else. I don't care. You can make it in China for all you know. But if the IP is owned by us, that's a big thing for us. Yeah. So and government has started now saying that they have an IDDM category where they say 60% of the IP is owned by India. We will place the order even if it is a single vendor. Earlier, we used to have a stupid rule that there should be 3 manufacturers for a defense product, but that's been given a go-by. So there is a lot of mental maturity that has come in the government currently, that they know that worldwide there are 3 manufacturers for defense product. How can we have in India? But yeah, so so I think we are very, very excited about the way things are happening. There's a lot of emphasis, and but at ground level, we would be more happier if actually orders were placed on us. The procurement cycle still continues to be very, very snail paced. It should be very fast. I mean, when you know who the buyer is and the user wants it, the buyer is ready to sell it. The facilitating agency takes so much time on deciding on that it's kind of disheartening sometimes. But I think the picture, what is looking now is very, very exciting for us.
That's good to know, Ashok. But now let me bring in somebody who was the user till 2 years ago and now is going to be a manufacturer, designer, manufacturer, and somebody who owns the IP. Marshal Dev, your thoughts on how we can make India a vibrant defense manufacturing hub, not just for India, but for the world?
Well, thank you, Nitin. Good afternoon, panelists and viewers. Actually, Nitin, it's a big disappointment being on this panel because, both Ashok and Jayant, we are all on the same page. They pull words out of my mouth. There is
no debate.
The same thing that I want to say.
There is no debate. There is no debate. But you should tell me what you are doing.
Yes, absolutely. So, I couldn't agree with them more. The idea is to own IP here. And one of the reasons why we are not where we should be, in spite of having all the resources, is because we are not focused on IP. Currently, IP is being generated in India only by one agency, that is DRDO. Okay, and I see no reason why Jayant can generate that IP. Why, in fact, Ashok is already doing. He's generating all his IP for his simulators. Okay, and they're very high quality simulators. I've seen that. Okay, what I want to emphasize is the fact that nobody's going to help you. Man, please don't mind, but Rolls Royce, well, they will die before they surrender a bit of their IP to us. Okay, because it's just giving an example of iPhone. IP is where the money is. So when Rolls Royce says that we want to work with you, okay, that's work on their terms. Their IP will never be compromised. So at the moment, you will get that $5 that Fox is getting, or maybe some bill of material. Okay, you maybe have 10% there. But if you want the country to grow, okay, then you have to generate IP here. And I see no reason why you can't generate IP here. I must tell an anecdote. Quite some time back, as a group captain, and L&T came to give a presentation. Quite some time back, or 20 years back, that Jayant also must have been, one of the youngsters there. And they said, we want to put DRDO out of business. So, I was always blunt and candid. I told him, I said, sir, it's like saying if auntie was similarly and don't shoot by my uncle, you don't have it in you. So that gentleman was very offended. It was a Parsi gentleman in L&T. Okay, he said, why would you say that? I will put DRDO out of action. I said, so you're not generating any IP. You want a contract. Okay, you have the wherewithal, you spend 10% of your ad budget, okay, and you have the wherewithal to generate a system, go thumb the table and tell the government this is a system that's made in India. You don't buy it, I'll send it to Myanmar, I'll send it to Indonesia, I'll send it to Vietnam. Okay, and then you'll shame our service into buying it. Okay, so as a young entrepreneur, okay, I learned from Jayant, I learned from Ashok, okay, and what I'm doing, okay, for my company is I'm not depending on our structure to test. I'll go to Witzel in Sweden. I'll spend €1 million. I will go to Netherlands and I'll hire a L-39 on an Alpha jet and I'll carry out my trials there, the way Europeans do. Okay, I'll get a European stamp of approval. I'll go all over the world and I'll tell our system. Okay, because here there's a conflict of interest. Okay, everybody who makes a system will understand. DRD wants to do the same thing, industry wants to do the same thing, but people will give eventual clearance like Semilac and everybody. That is again, with DRDO. So that problem is a very real problem. Okay, I've seen this problem when I was in service. I also see that when I was in service, some of my colleagues would have a different standard for testing an Indian system and a different standard for testing imported system. Okay, fortunately, that's come to a stop now. Okay, all the senior leadership that time we made very sure that you compare apples to apples and you have a same set of standards for checking an imported system and an Indian system. Indian systems check used to be very rigorous. I want to know what you did. I want to know what you bought this for. I want to know, what material is used here, even if it was not relevant, because you never trusted an Indian guy. Okay, anything that came from abroad, you took it.
That is changing now.
That is changing now, and I'm very glad it started changing some time back. Sorry, ma'am, you have to say something.
Yes. Back to Ms. Danaghey. He just said about the IP, and then I'll come to the other two of my colleagues here. Your response to what Air Marshal Dave said.
So I admire the passion and the ambition, and India certainly has the talent to achieve its ambition. And I recognise what you speak of, sir. You speak of the Rolls Royce of the past. So the Rolls Royce of the past has looked at export markets like India as where we sell hardware. And when I speak about Make in India, you know it better than I know it. I'm talking about manufacture, that 5%, right? Manufacture under license. That's the model to date. We are seeking to change the game, and we are very close to an imminent agreement between our two governments to co-create a new jet engine. That will be Indian-owned IP. And that is a very clear commitment from my nation in partnership with your nation to create self-reliance. Because the Rolls-Royce of the future knows that this isn't about exporting hardware to India. This is about exporting IP. I think you put it so eloquently. IP is where the money is. And we want to be in partnership with India, co-creating new IP. We haven't done it yet, so I appreciate the skepticism amongst the panel, but we are on the verge of being able to do that with jet engine technology in partnership with DRDO. So I ask you, I guess, for patience in the coming weeks and months, because that is something that you will see the UK government confirm its commitment to India very shortly. We've been working for many years. It has been slower than any of us would like, but we are about to get there, at least for the first step. So I take what you say. I think you will see it change very quickly.
Oh, that will be an important milestone when that happens. But let me take this back to Ashok, who, as I said, has been very passionate about IP. And of course, Ashok, you also mentioned about the slow pace of acquisition. The cycle that takes so long to complete the process. What would you like, one or two things that you would like the government to do so that the pace picks up? Because that's something that mid-sized companies like yours would really like the government to do quickly.
One thing is the procurement cycle. I think they should put a hard stop of saying that, they have a 36-month cycle, which is the same for, if you want to buy a small simulator to a big platform, it is 36 months. It doesn't make sense at all. They should actually say that for smaller items, we'll finish the procurement in 6 months, because time is money, especially for small and medium companies. And the second is that, as the Air Marshal they were saying, we need to have same platform. I mean, my payment is made after I deliver, whereas the foreign guys, the moment they say it's ready for dispatch, it's ready for dispatch, they are inspected and they're paid the money through letter of credit. And we take almost, after delivering, it takes for us 6 months after delivering installation, certification, training, and all that. And that, it's a lot of capital cost. I think if these two can be done, the faster procurement cycle, especially for different procurement cycle for different products, and the second is faster payment, so that in fact I would suggest that when a smaller companies are involved, they should make 100% payment in advance against bank guarantees, because that will reduce the cost of capital to the smaller companies. And government anyway, their cost of capital is almost zero.
That's true. But JD Patil, you deal with the government at various levels. I mean, you have so many products your company does. You've already listed them right at the beginning. But if you have to suggest to make India the manufacturing hub, or even the hub for manufacturing Indian-owned IP products and then exporting them, what would you like beyond the kind of policy prescriptions that have been done over the past 3 or 4 months?
I think I'll take the second part first, Nitin. On the exports, I sincerely believe that at Indian cost of capital, we can do exports, but we can't really rule the world. It's just not possible. And towards that, we need to be able to find some extremely innovative mechanisms of using our foreign exchange reserves. We have tons of it. I firmly believe that if the government takes cognizance of those reserves, which obviously remain locked with the central bank, that is something which actually can be leveraged for export. The IP that we all generate, because that's something which is a matter of decades for us. We're creating that, and you can truly export only when you are doing your own IP. If you are not doing your own designs, you can hardly export, because if you are on a TOT mode or a co-production kind of a mode, your partner decides whether you will deliver to any given country, because it obviously would be then territory based. Whereas in our cases, I have seen a dramatic growth in export in last 3 years. Till 2017, we cannot really say exports were allowed out of India. They were not really allowed. 2017 onwards, it truly began, while I must say, as Larsen Toubro, we've been exporting for nearly now 25 years. Some of the smaller products, because we obviously began everything start small. We started very small with a partner to DRDO. More than 100 research programs of DRDO, we must have been partners to. Of course, thereafter, we could do on our own steam when you get certain amount of, call it, build a structure and build some amount of business size. You can pump in your own earnings and then you actually build. We must have done 200 systems thereafter on our own. Now, obviously, you said it very right. When you do that, there's a dramatic change in exports, what we experienced. At the same time, there's some amount of dampening given the current scenario, COVID, for last about 4 or 5 months. We obviously see that to be temporary. But when you do that and when you start talking to government, my belief is if you again have complete control on your bill of material through your own designs, your price points are very different. And when your price points are different, you have a different lever to talk to the government and say, I will not accept, like what Ashok said, that these are my standard payment terms. And this is something which actually came from late Mr. Parikar's time. He actually allowed that these are my standard payment terms, you quote for my standard payment terms. But if you want better payment terms, then give me an upfront discount. That is basically the interest cost related takeoff. And I don't mind giving you payment stages which actually you want. I think this is where a dramatic change started happening. And if you genuinely have your own designs and your own IP and you control the whole bill of material, you actually can contribute very significantly there. Going forward, essentially, I have been a very, I would say, active and vocal proponent of banning imports. There are certain things which India cannot stop, but there are large number of things that we buy which India can simply stop. And I've been saying that this comes to all of us Indians very naturally. I'm using a Sanskrit word called upvas. Now, upvas does something good to you for maintaining your health, and that's the same thing it would do. And we have gone through this kind of a fast. More because of the sanctions that India saw, and for multiple decades we saw these sanctions. And during this period, we were one of those companies which partnered with every strategic sector, call it nuclear power, call it space. And we are partners to the nuclear and space domains for more than 50 and 60 years. Now, this is a legacy by which if you genuinely have your own knowledge, your own know-how, your own IP, and your own product development which comes out of it, you obviously can do very differently. One thing I would certainly want, as I said, one is stopping, and there's a recent announcement by the government saying there will be a negative list, which even today is a work in progress, being matured as we speak, and more is a wish list getting into that banned category. Second aspect, obviously, one would want is little more of funds towards indigenous buying. Again, the new policy which has just been announced, we have not seen it in action, but at least the announcement says there will be a definite carved out portion which will be specific to the Indian industries, which will buy from Indian industry. And that cannot be stagnant year on year. It has to be growing year on year, because that's essentially where one would be able to do far more within this country and at a different price point. It was a matter of pleasure for all of us being involved with the space sector. When you reach yourself to the moon and you reach yourself to the Mars, and you say that you did it at a fraction of a cost the whole world knows. And that's essentially where your own know-how, your own knowledge seem to be delivering. And we need to be only trusting that aspect. There's a sea change in the attitude of not only the government, I would say the entire middle body. There's a user on one side and of course the industry on the other side. And the user has dramatically started changing the way they accept the industry now, which was not the case. I mean, 25, 30 years back, it was only the Indian Navy who was truly serious on indigenization. And that's the stage we started doing. So in my entire portfolio, if I say the Navy is the biggest portfolio, obviously, because it started 3.5 decades back. Of course, Air Force is the more recent. But then, of course, 20 years back, very sizable amount of deliveries happening to the armed forces in the form of army. So a whole lot of land systems, whole lot of these classes of weapon systems today happen here. Yes. Fact is, we need to then say, I will not allow a global competition there. And we see it in the form of policy, in the form of conversion, we are yet to see. We're seeing some amount of it. I'm not here to say that nothing is happening. There's a lot which is happening, but we can possibly do far, far, far more.
All that I can tell you is that in the previous session, Defense Secretary Dr. Ajay Kumar was also asked the same question by me and by Mr. Kalyani, and he said that the first list, not the entire list, but the first list of items that would be banned will be issued very soon.
Yeah.
And I asked him how soon, so he said very soon. He didn't say anything beyond that. But that notwithstanding, let me take this to Marshal Dev. You were, as I said, as Vice Chief of the Air Staff in your last assignment. The Air Force attitude also towards the procurement of indigenous systems would have undergone sea change in the last 20 years or so, in your last 20 years of your career. And what do you see about, what new companies like yours, which are coming into high-end technology, will want from the government going forward?
Firstly, I would like to tell you what we would want from the Air Force.
Okay.
What I would want from the Air Force is to copiously use delegated powers to get what you want.
Right.
So generally, service officers, after the government, after Mr. Parikar came, that is the time delegated powers we really started using for the first time. And because he was such a man, means everybody was interacted with him. You're very close to him. Okay, he was one person who had his ideas very clear. If your intentions are correct, he said, just go ahead and do it. Okay, so I remember one case where I wanted to put Cisco out of the loop because you just got to see how these multinationals they're ripping us off. Okay, they were charging 3 times the market cost for their switches. So I went to Mr. Parikar. I said, sir, at that time I was only DG Air Ops. I was looking after air operations. I was not the vice chief. Okay, and I told him, sir, we need to put them out of business. Okay, so which Indian companies? He says that there should be at least 2 Indian companies. There were 2 Indian companies. I got my engineers. We sat together. We said this QoS is superfluous. Okay, this forces us to go towards Cisco. We don't need it. And we made fresh QoS and we gave the contract to the L1 between CTAC and Tejas. Tejas got the contract. So we need to work proactively to make sure that our money stays in India. Okay, and one way of making sure that our money stays in India is to use delegated powers. Delegated powers now I'm told are 500 crores.
Yes.
500 crores is a large sum for small companies who can develop genuine IP and then put it together. And I just wanted to, refer to Jayant. I know when I was in service, okay, we used to have lots of arguments on is Air Force doing enough? Yes, Air Force is not doing enough. I agree with you. But that is because, like we say, a naval ship, it takes a lot to sink a naval ship if it's not well made. Okay? But an aircraft, you can't take chance with an aircraft. Okay, but very quickly it goes out of control. Okay, I just want to remind people of the Cirrus crash. We had Cirrus crashed, okay, because the manufacturer for the engines, I don't know if it was Rolls Royce, okay, they had given in their engine restart sequence, just one thing was out of place and that caused this crash and those people died. So, I'm not at all saying that L&T shouldn't have been encouraged. We should have encouraged L&T. Okay, but our tolerance for failure is way less. Okay, Ashok has got a favorite thing that I keep telling everybody. If you want to do something, fail quickly and get to it and find something else. Right? This is what happened in Gripen. Okay, you see, we keep cribbing that Tejas has not done well, but Tejas is such a beautiful aircraft to fly. Okay, yes, there are a whole lot of engineering issues from HAL there, we are not good engineers at all. Okay, but the way it has been designed, it's software, it's, fly-by-wire, it's a beautiful aircraft to fly. But imagine if there were 2 Tejas crashes, would Tejas would have progressed? There were 2 Gripen crashes, all related to software and some screw-ups in their design. Okay, did they stop? They didn't stop. Okay, but our tolerance for failure is way less. Supposing I make something and I go to the government and I say, this is a missile that I have made and would you like to test it? They say, yeah, I'll test it. Let's say something happens to that first test, it fails. I'm not DRDO. If my test fails, they'll write me off. Okay, I need to have that. I need to have that reserve, and I need to have that patience on the other side. Yes, it's a test. It's a mechanical thing. You study the system, you see why it has failed, and you try again.
Correct.
Okay, that is what Air Force should have done with L&T. I know the work that they do with the Navy. I've gone and seen that Vizag, and hats off to L&T. Unfortunately, we can't talk about it, but that is world class. These two people, Ashok and Jayant, we are on the same page. We want to say that we make IP here and we sell our products that are designed here. In DPP earlier, there was a loophole. You get to, I can have an arrangement with Rolls Royce to say, listen, okay, you say that you're giving me 40% IP and rest of the stuff, you bill of material will make sure that it's routed through India. And then you could pass off a Rolls Royce system as an IDDM system and then offer it. That, I think, in this new draft, DPP, they have made very clear that there is there is a separate category that very clearly says IDDM means it is designed here.
Right.
Okay. If you give this choice that 30% of IP is here, but 70% of the parts are brought up from here. Okay, then it becomes, IDDM. That's not correct.
Yeah, I think the purpose is defeated there in that sense.
The purpose is really defeated. Okay, so what you need to do is that make sure that is IDDM, like Bharat Forge, for instance. Okay, they are making engines on their own.
Right.
Okay, they got guys from Cranfield. Okay, they got some engineers, and they want to make engines on their own. Oh, they should get special treatment.
Correct.
Okay, so you put Bharat Forge against HAL and Rolls Royce partnership. I would. My best wishes are with Bharat Forge. Okay, Bharat Forge engine, that will be a real engine. Okay, so in all these things, we got to be absolutely blunt, candid, and upfront about wanting to do things here in India.
Right.
Anybody who is with us like this, for a moment, I am not suggesting that we shouldn't take consultancy or help from people who are already experts in the field. We must. Okay, we must. Okay, but the basic design, the basic ideas, the basic specifications should be driven by Indians.
Correct.
Okay, that is what I would like to suggest.
Let me take this to Louise. In fact, you heard all the three other panelists on this panel talking about the need to have Indian IP and creating products in India. And you also spoken about Rolls Royce's plan to do something in India. Tell us a little more about how would you encourage Indian companies by giving consultancy, having joint ventures with them, or would you have co-production, co-designing and co-production? Can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. The short answer is all of the above. So right now, today, and I know we're working on history, so we're working on what's happened to date, and our aspirations for the future are different because the world is changing and COVID-19 has only accelerated that. So today, we operate the consultancy, training, and the joint venture model. And as I referenced, we already have a very successful joint venture in IAMPL, which manufactures, let's use that word again, manufacture just that 5%. But actually, we've got more than 2,000 Rolls-Royce employees, including Mr. Patil's son, here in India for Rolls-Royce. Some of those are direct, some are through partnerships. And in Bangalore, we've actually got a component design facility. So we've started to move from the 5% manufacture to actually developing new components, designing components for our civil business. That's what the engineers at Manyata Tech Park in Bangalore do. They do component design. So we're starting to move into that design space. But when I look at the future potential, it's true co-development. And when I speak about true co-development, I'm speaking with two voices. So I'm not only speaking for Rolls-Royce, obviously we're one of the companies in the world that is capable of jet engine technologies today, among others, but I'm speaking for the UK, because the UK is relatively uniquely positioned. Now, there are other nations that can do this, but we have very seriously, and you heard it from our Minister of Defence Procurement, who attended DEF Expo back in February, we are very serious about co-developing new technology where the IP will be Indian owned. So no percentage, no 40%, no 30%. And again, I recognise Sir's description as how we've operated in the past, but we've seen the need to change. We have an intent to change, and that was very much voiced by the UK government. So we will be in support of the UK government in making that true co-development of new technology, which will be owned by India, real. And that, for me, is my main goal, to achieve that self-reliant India. And that's where Rolls Royce can help. So we'll move to co-development. Today, you're very right, we're in consultancy and JV, but we see a different future.
That's very good to know. Ashok, I want to bring you in here about the other plans that the new policy has about realistic GSQRs that have been talked about, where you need to have GSQRs that are not best of the best and unachievable. What are your thoughts on that aspect of the policy reform?
Yeah, I think they should interact more with the Indian vendors in this. Earlier, they used to, I mean, the impression I used to get was, after looking at the GSQR, that they visited all the websites of all the companies and taken the best features from all the things. Even if sometimes there would be inconsistency between one feature and the other feature. But but I think that there is more interaction now with the Indian vendors, and the specifications are not really out of whack like earlier. So, but I think now the time is even for foreign companies, that the way Louise is saying, is the exact way to move in India. If you want to come in India, you have to move in here, start developing here, because you are the world's best talent in India. There's no doubt about that. In fact, a lot of people already do. Or Microsoft, all the guy, Google, most of their R&D is done here. Only thing is the value is not here. The value goes back to San Francisco. People's Republic of San Francisco. But the point here is, so the point here is that we really need to get people who are willing to come here, build the thing. And I think that this is the place to be, because government is really, really going to move to buying only locally IP-owned companies. Wherever it is available, the IDDM says, if there is even one company in India that has the IP, we will go and buy with them. So that changes everything. I'm very, very hopeful in the next few years, the GSQR will be completely streamlined, the process will be shortened, and if there is the IP owned, they'll have a huge advantage. Now we have started talking like Benjamin Netanyahu, who used to say that the Israelis used to buy the own country's hardware, even if it could perform 60% of the capabilities of the foreign competition. That's how committed they were. Today, they are world's leading thing. But today, most of the time we say, listen, Ashok, I actually had an army officer saying, Ashok, there is no runner-up in a war. I said, you are going to be a runner-up for life if you talk like that. So the fact is that we have to have the short-term pain if you want to be a long-term player in this field.
Yeah, that's something that we should actually look at more seriously. But JD Patil, one of the other things announced in the defense policy, which makes India Atmanirbhar or self-reliant in defense or on many other things, is also about corporatization of the OFB, which is, I think, a far-reaching reform when it happens. What are your thoughts on this? Because both have to work. Actually, government is not saying that we are going to completely banish or completely shut down OFB, but they're corporatizing it. Do you think it's going to help in some ways to the entire defense sector? Is he missing on the? I think he's locked out, perhaps.
Sorry, I had muted because there's a cross noise which was passing through. I said very tricky question, but I'll still answer it. I must say that I go back, and history tells you far better examples and lessons to learn out of. All of us have been flying in domestic, airlines, and there used to be only one in India. And Air India used to be a monopoly. And after the skies were opened up, we know what has happened. And I prefer to fly Air India at least half the number of times today And that day, if you ask me, I would hate to fly the same airline. So this is a sea change that can happen. I've been a student in an IIT, and we knew you have to go to an state bank because there's only one state bank in the whole campus. And then the state bank would be open when you have all your classes, and the state bank won't be open when you need. Truly, when you need, and as a student, you will need what? 200 rupees. The 200 rupees you can't withdraw because you have your classes. And this is what the banking system was. Privatization brought in enormous amount of flexibility, and you could at 8 o'clock in the night, and that's how I opened my first account with an ICICI bank. I actually walked into a bank at 8 o'clock, and the branch manager himself says, "Sir, please come in. What can I do for you?" Now, this sea change in service attitude has actually made State Bank of India far superior today. Now, what would possibly happen to even the OFB is they have amazing assets. I can tell you, we all can die 10 times. We won't have 1/10 of that asset.
That's
and I'm
true.
serious about it because I have actually seen going through each of these kind of places. They have the kind of assets, they have the kind of physical infrastructure which anyone in the private sector would die for. Now, scenario is all that does not produce. And I'm first an Indian, thereafter a corporate. As an Indian, does it deliver the country whatever they produce today, and do they deserve to have all that for what they do? Now, if we simply look at it as a nation, they got to be delivering more. And ask me, people are not bad anywhere. It's an amazing set of people. If you go and really talk to them, it's the systems which don't allow them to do whatever they are. I know of times when the whole of OFB board sitting together couldn't make a decision on purchase of few crores. I don't want to reveal the number, but few crores. The decision would go to Delhi. Now, with this scenario, you can't expect them to perform, and you can't expect them to be doing any deviation. They will want to stick to something which is absolute L1, even if it is life expired material they are buying. Now, this is exactly where the scenario was. As a result, we know huge problems which OFB has been criticized for, and not entirely because of people, but because of, I would say, the system they themselves have got entangled into dramatically unfolds them when they get corporatized. And it's for the leadership there to truly then make the best use of it. And I believe competition makes all that happen. And it shouldn't be, OFB shouldn't be anything different. And all of us as corporates would learn to compete. So is the new policy, which essentially is talking of, any given sector, there can be so many number of public sector undertakings. I have a feeling the harmonization of PSUs will also happen, because ultimately that's something. We have some who are few hundred crore and some who are few tens of thousands of crores. Correct. It just doesn't make sense having all of them. There has to be some M&A right within that.
I think
that's a direction to move.
No, correct. And the government has decided to bite the bullet, which is a good thing. I think that's where I think the level playing field will come. Ultimately, it will benefit the nation. But we are entering into the last few minutes of the conversation. So I just want to go around the panelists and start with Louise and ask one question common to all of you, but start with you, the only lady on the panel. When we look at the next 10 years in Indian defense industry, where would you look at the defense industry be? All put together, OEMs, Indian defense companies, defense public sector units, all of them. Will India be able to meet its own needs, at least 60 to 70% of its own needs in the coming decade, given the policy changes that have come in? Louise. Yes.
So I believe so. So my summary would be it's growth through partnership. So for the next 10 years, I think we need to move from talking about making in India for the world to creating in India for the world. I think industry needs to be a key part of that in partnership with the capability in India. So for me, it's about growing partnership, growing capability from a very strong base, growing trust. And that means letting go of some control from multinational companies, like letting go of IP. This is not export of hardware anymore. This is export of intellectual property. And Rolls Royce is with India on the journey for self-reliance. So I believe that we can make this happen together.
I think it's great to know that. Ashok, your thoughts? Next 10 years.
I think in 10 years' time, India will be definitely in the top two. Number one or two, I'm not so sure, but we will be in the top two. And the second thing is that we will be definitely surplus nation. We will no longer be a deficit nation, in the sense that we will build in capabilities in some systems so much that we'll become world leaders in that and we'll be exporting. Still, we will be importing some of the stuff which we are not very good at. But that's all right. As long as we are net exporters and we are getting more foreign currency rather than giving it away, I think that's all right. But I am very, very hopeful about the next decade. We will be in the number 1 or 2 position in 10 years' time, and we will be having major platform that's India made. And because of our relationship with other countries, most of these platforms will be exported from here.
Good to know. Marshal, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that 10 years is a very reasonable time, and we can't have reasonable targets if you want to really grow. We must be unreasonable. Okay, within 5 years we must have substantial exports from defense domain. Okay, substantial exports in the sense the government must set up and notice. My God, what was this domain doing? It was dormant for so long, and we are getting so much of money from this domain. And just see, once the government knows that this domain can generate revenue, how quickly everything that we want will happen. Okay, your DPP will change, the way the ministry looks at you will change, the way the world looks at you will change. Okay, we want to be in a position where we can outbid Chinese every time, and whatever they're selling, whether it's UAVs, missiles, warships, and we can outbid things like, warships like L&T. L&T, I'm sure, will only matter of time before they start competing with Korea, they start competing with Germany, and offer their systems to many countries. The only thing that we import is if it makes commercial sense to import. If it makes commercial sense to import it quickly. IP is yours. Okay, so that bill of material, like Ashok says, stays lower, and you get the credit. Okay, 5 years.
Oh, that's a good way to actually compress the timelines. And I think you made the right point that unless you are hungry for success and unless you are a risk taker, that cannot happen.
Yeah.
JD, your thought. You are one of the leading defense manufacturers, defense creators, defense manufacturers in the country. Your thoughts on this?
Nitin, I see very clearly that we certainly, I don't see any doubt in my mind when I say that we'll be surplus nation in terms of export versus import. We would have probably not seen much of imports happening, for exception pure commercial, as has been said, makes sense to buy. Otherwise, it should all happen here. And of course, with the frugal engineering ability and the frugal manufacturing, both strengths of India, we actually should be able to sort of take our IP as well as products all over the world.
I think, on that note, before I end, I have to just sum up a couple of things that I can take away from here. One is, of course, that India has the talent. India's policies is now aligning with what needs to be done for Make in India and make self-reliant India in defense, as well as contributing to the larger economy. The aim of taking it to $5 trillion by 2025 that India has, I think defense will play a major role in that, apart from doing exports. And it's going to be a collaborative model as far as the OEMs and Indian defense industry is concerned. They'll have to come to India. India is a big market as far as defense platforms and equipment is concerned. And I also see no reason why India cannot be a export surplus nation when it comes to exporting defense equipment to other countries. But for that, it needs a very synergized approach from all stakeholders, including the Defense Ministry, the Armed Forces. Armed Forces also need to get their act together and encourage the products made in India, both in terms of design, development, and manufacturing. And of course, given the fact that the budget is under pressure, will be under pressure for some years to come, there is no choice but to go Indian, buy Indian, go Indian, and do self-reliance in defense in coming years. Thank you very much, all of you, for this wonderful, insightful discussion. And I thank India Inc. On behalf of Bharat Shakti. This has been a wonderful foray into an international discussion. I thank all of you for being part of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you. Thank you, India Inc.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And all very colour coordinated too. Everyone in blue. I did not get the memo in my white shirt. Nitin, thank you so much.
Yes,
we're going to talk
absolutely.
more a little later after this little break, where we're going to turn our attention to China. Of course, in the headlines of late for maybe all the wrong reasons. So we'll look at what we've learned about China and how economies around the world may contend with the growing power of China, maybe harness some of that potential. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk more about that after this short break.